So, folks, there are a couple of things that have gotten my attention this morning. Actually, they were posted last night on the news. And I'll go straight to these articles. Now, I don't really like quoting heads that much because the comment section, the people are just as anti-Semitic, Jew-hating as I have seen. Unfortunately, this news site appears to be sometimes ahead of even Matt Drudge himself. So while the other ones are not saying Trump signs order closing border with Mexico, this one does. It appears that the closing of the border with Mexico is imminent. And folks, look, I'm going to point out something first. Reading these couple of articles this morning, even though they are political in nature, what I'm going to talk about today is not political in nature at all. It's just a coincidence, a happenstance that seems to coincide with Scripture. And I will get to that in a few minutes. So it says, yesterday we reported that President Trump has authorized order to act in a law enforcement capacity to perform these military protective activities that the Secretary of Defense determines are reasonable, necessary to protect border agents, including a show of use of force, including lethal force where necessary, crowd control, temporary detention, and cursory search. That wasn't all. Speaking to reporters at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, the president said on Thursday that he also signed an order to close the U.S. border with Mexico, adding that he's authorized troops to use lethal force against migrants who attempt to enter the U.S. Now, I don't need to read any more of that. I think you get the gist of the article. And indeed, he did sign this order, and yet it seems that mainstream media has not posted it even this morning. They just said that he's planning on doing it. Okay. Now, we're talking about border closure here. Of course, folks, we knew this was coming eventually, right? But take a look at this article. Now, this news publication is not Zero Hedge. It's not the Daily Star. It is not the UK Sun. No, it's the Guardian, a left-wing publication. And look what we have here, posted yesterday by Patrick Wintour. Hillary Clinton, Europe must curb immigration to stop right-wing populists. Okay. So now what Hillary Clinton has pointed out was, in a way, that the Europeans, and including the left-wingers in the United States, are not prepared for the populist backlash that is taking place. In fact, they didn't believe it would happen. And so she's saying, whoa, 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 stop it, stop it, stop it, because if you don't, that the right-wing populists are going to overthrow your governments. This is what she is implying. Now, we go to Daniel 2. How often have I mentioned this particular chapter and a verse that is coming? Verse 40, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. And this was, this fourth beast began with Augustine, or Caesar Augustus. For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and the iron breaks all these, it shall break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and the toes, part of clay in the pot of iron, that's later in the last part of the kingdom, when they break apart, you see. The kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron. And for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly fractured. And whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, in other words, well, I'll just let the scripture speak for itself. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Yes, this is what Europe has been championing for the last, I don't know, 10, 20, whatever years, especially the past few years, thinking that somehow that they could get away with it. But oh, they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So there comes to be a point where they realize it's backfiring. And in the days of those kings, in the beginning days or the latter days, come on now, folks. This is, even a third grader would understand. It would be in the last part. It would be during the time when they realize they do not cleave to one another. And so what has to be done? Well, they're going to have to follow the direction of Hillary Clinton. And they're going to have to, well, they've gotten Hillary Clinton's support. Hillary Clinton is letting them know that if they continue to invite all these immigrants from the Middle East in and from Africa in, that the right-wing populists will overthrow their governments. Okay? This is what she's implying. You can read the article if you want to. It's not hard to find. You can see the link right up here. All right. So, it is at that time when the kingdom will be set up. Now, if you go and look in Daniel 7, you will see that one like that the Ancient of Days comes first, and then one like to Jerusalem, and one like the Son of Man came with a cloud from the sky and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him here before him. And to him was given a dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not be taken away, and his kingdom which shall not be destroyed. Now, it says right here, it talks about the 10 kingdoms again. It talks about the little horn who sits in the Vatican. And how the holy people and the Jerusalem was given into the hands. See, the holy people, that's the Jews. And Jerusalem was given into the hands of this Caesar for 3.5 years, from 67 AD until the fall of 70 AD. And that was when the Jerusalem was destroyed. But in response to this, which would be many, many, many years later, judgment will sit. And that kingdom of Rome is going to be taken away. It will be consumed, just as is written in Daniel 7 in the last part of, no, Daniel 9 in the last part of 27. I got it backwards. And destroy it at the end. At the time of the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole of heaven, under the sky is what it means, not above the sky, but under the sky, will be given to the people, not of the saints, but the people, the Kodesh. Yes, the Kodesh. Who are the Kodesh or the Kaddish? They are the Jews of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Now, so we see that at the same time, at the very end of the 10 toes, where they get caught in their own trap. Yes, they set a trap and they get caught in their own trap. What trap is that? They begin to realize that their doctrine of diversity doesn't work because they do not require assimilation. Now, when the Jews came to Europe, they required assimilation or death. And they killed many Jews as a result. But now payback is required. So now what we're going to see in Europe is the slamming of the doors. Donald Trump has started it first. And now Mexico has realized they messed up. The folks in Tijuana are now very angry with these immigrants from Guatemala and Honduras and telling them to go home. And I'm hearing that there are even threats out against them. It didn't turn out the way they planned. So the door is being shut in the United States, the immigration door, and now Hillary Clinton is calling upon the Europeans to shut their immigration door as well in The Guardian. Europe must get a handle on immigration to combat a growing threat from right-wing populists, Hillary Clinton has said, calling on the continent's leaders to send out a stronger signal, showing that they are not going to be able to continue to provide refuge and support. So basically what she's done is she has thrown Angela Merkel under the bus. In an interview with The Guardian, the former Democratic presidential candidate praised the generosity shown by German Chancellor Angela Merkel, but suggested immigration was inflaming voters and contributed to the election of Donald Trump and Britain's vote to leave the EU. They're finally starting to see the light, folks, but it's too late. Because this, noticing the fact that iron does not mix with miry clay, is a signal for the kingdom in Jerusalem to come. That's right. That's what it is. Daniel 2 and verse, well, I believe it's 45, is it? No. And verse 43, whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And of course, for this to actually come out and say it, that means these people who perpetrated this fraud of diversity in Europe and the United States are eventually going to find out that it's backfiring. So now they're starting to run away from it, but it's too late. So now I know that many times that our Father in heaven, whose name is Jehovah, has exacted poetic justice upon his enemies. And so it's not surprising that the Son would do the same thing. Now, there's something written in Revelation 3, and this is concerning the message to the church in Philadelphia, which was at that time in Asia Minor. And apparently Paul had already died, and the only apostle left at that time, I think, was John. And a message had to be sent to these 7 churches in Philadelphia, each a different message. But this one it's almost as if it's poetic here. Okay. It says, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things, says he that is holy, he that is true, and he has the key of David. Now, the key of David is the key of Jerusalem, and not to be confused with the keys that are in Rome. See, Rome is the opposer. Okay. Anyway, he that opens, he opens and no man shuts, and shuts and no man opens. Interesting, huh? Now, we know that this will happen at the time of the end. You know, when they shut their immigration doors in Europe and the United States and other countries. Now, look here. I don't know if I should do this one first or the John 19 first. I will do this one first, I think. So, then shall the heavenly kingdom, or the kingdom from heaven, be likened unto 10 virgins which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. They went. In other words, I'll just continue. And 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. And they that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. And the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. Thousands of years, dark ages, days of darkness. Did light come back? No. It says, but at the stroke of midnight, it was still night. There was a outcry made. And the outcry was, behold, the bridegroom comes, go you out to meet him. When does this happen? This happens when you will see, what was it? The apostles, the disciples said, where, Master, where? He said, there where the eagles are gathered, that's where the dead bodies are going to be. So he implies that it will be in the Ezekiel 38-39 war, which is about to happen. Okay. So that's when the outcry is going to be made. Then it says, all those virgins rose and took their lamps, and the foolish said unto the wise, give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, not so, lest there be not enough for you and us, but go rather to them that buy and sell for yourselves. And of course, it takes time, doesn't it, to learn these things. I didn't learn these things overnight, and neither will anybody else. Unless, of course, the Holy Spirit comes upon somebody because they are of the elect as promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I digress. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went. Yeah, they went. They didn't get raptured. It's went. They entered. Entered what? With him to the marriage, and the door was shut. All right, we just read in Revelation 3 about a door, an open door that no man can shut. It'll be a period of time. But once that time is up, then it will be shut, and no man will be able to open it. Go back to Matthew 25, where it talks about the door was shut, and afterward, later. So here they come, late. Why? Because they weren't prepared. They did not realize they were sleeping in the darkness of this world, like Lot's wife was. Then came the other virgins, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered, verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, you know not neither the day nor the hour and where the Son of Man comes. So he shut the door to the kingdom. Now, there's something written in John 19. Okay, that was on a different subject. All right. So then, When does this happen? I love going back to Romans 11 because people have gotten puzzled when I read it because it didn't fit the narrative that their preacher told them. Their eyes glaze over. People's eyes glaze over. It's a sign of trying to defend themselves from something that they are afraid of. You see. Now, so Paul in Romans 11, I'll start in verse 17, is warning the Romans against what he was warning the Romans, okay? The warning that Paul gave the Romans was not heeded. All right, and if some of the branches were broken off and you being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them. No, the Israel is not grafted into church, folks. No. If you want to be in the kingdom and you are a Gentile, you must be grafted in among the Israelite branches. But you see, the Roman church got it backwards. Why did they get it backwards? Because in verse 18, they boasted against the branches, against the words of Paul, against Paul's warning. But if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you. Yes, you see, they wanted to change the name of the Messiah to their false gods because they felt like that they bear the root. Paul warned them against that. Did they listen? No. You will say then the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you now stand by faith. Don't be high-minded. What happened? The Romans became high-minded, and they murdered, pillaged, and raped in the name of Jesus. They did. A false Messiah, a false God that honors Zeus, who is Satan. Now he says, look at the goodness and the severity of Jehovah. On them fell severity, but toward you goodness, only if you continue in goodness. If you don't continue in goodness, the same thing will happen to you. Now, what happened to the Jews in Jerusalem of 67 AD BCE to 70 BC? What happened to them? It will happen to you too, you Romans, if you do not continue in his goodness. What happened with the Romans? They rejected the goodness outright and turned back like a dog to its vomit, is what they did. And so Paul's warning was set in stone, and the acts of the Romans and the Christian Europe is now set in stone. Therefore, the punishment that Paul warned about will be set in stone against Roman Europe. Otherwise, you shall be cut off, and they will be cut off. And the word cut off is ikapto, which is to cut down. And what you do with a tree when you cut it down, you burn it in the fire. And they also, it says, if they stay, not in unbelief, but they shall be grafted back in. Well, guess what? Ezekiel 38 and 39 guarantees that they will believe. Guaranteed. After Jehovah, our Father in heaven, saves them from who? From the Byzantines. They're Romans too. Will save them from the Byzantines and the Byzantine proxy, namely Gog and Magog. And he says, because if you were cut out of a wild olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more than these branches, these Israelite branches, which are natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? What he's saying is they have a much better chance than you, Romans, because that, after all, is their own olive tree. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part, that's right, part, has happened to Israel until the filling up of the Gentiles be come in. Once again, fullness. Sum total, filling up, fullness. I'll continue down here. There was somewhere in here. Okay. So it's from pleru, completion, which means completion means end. So there was a finite number of days. As we read in Daniel 9, it has to do with time. So the completion of time. And we further read in Psalm, I believe it is. We'll go there. It has to do with time, folks. Completion of time. The fullness of time. Right, so we'll go to, hopefully I'll find it. Here we go. Psalm 102:13. You shall arise and have mercy upon Zion, for the time to favor her. Yes, the set time is come. So we read back in Romans 11 that the fullness of the Gentiles coincides with the bringing back of Jacob, the appointed time to bring Jacob back. All right. So verse 25 and 26 go together simultaneously until the fullness of the Gentiles to be come in. So all Israel shall be saved. What does that word say? To save. All right. So those of you, to save, to heal, to preserve, to rescue. Do you Christians not know what the word save means? All Israel shall be saved, because it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and he shall turn ungodliness from Jacob. Why? Because of the new covenant written in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, that Paul reaffirms in Hebrews chapter 8, verses 8 through 12. For this is my covenant unto them, that he promised that he will fulfill that promise, when I shall take away their sins. Now, here's what we will do. All right? So, this is What is the covenant? What is the covenant with Israel? He takes away their sins. Now watch this. Okay. I'll use this one, use this window, and we'll go to Jeremiah 31. Right? Jeremiah 31. The new covenant right here for everyone to see. New covenant. And what is Jehovah's promise concerning the new covenant? I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sins no more. You see. Now, just so you, to those of you, I've had people say, well, the prophets don't matter anymore. Well, I guess then what they're saying is the words that John wrote in Revelation doesn't matter anymore either. And I must warn you folks. Well, let me go to the Hebrews 8 verses 8 through 12 first, and then I want to go back to, I believe it is John 7. Is it not John 7? Revelation. Might have been Revelation 2, in fact. I'm not sure. All right, Hebrews 8. All right. For if the first covenant had been without fault, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with Israel, he said, behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, not the Lord. You go back in Jeremiah, I've showed people already that the Lord is not the Lord. That's Baal. That's the pagan god that the King James translators and other language translators have superimposed to their detriment upon the word of truth. Says Jehovah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And so what is this new covenant? What is the heart and the soul of the new covenant? Is this: for I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. And so, going back to Romans 11, and so all Israel shall be saved. That's right. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob, for this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. So his covenant is he's going to save all Israel and take away their sins, which Christianity today does not believe. Now, it says, concerning the gospel, they, Israel, are enemies for the Gentiles' sakes. But concerning the election, they are the beloved for the patriarchs' sakes. Because the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot be changed, cannot be repented of. It cannot be reversed. It's absolute. Therefore, Jeremiah 31 verses 31 through 34 stands, which was the words of Jehovah himself, and Paul was merely repeating those same words in Hebrews 8 verses 8 through 12. Now, so all Israel will be able to walk through that open door. All the believers in Yehoshua will be able to walk through that open door. As we read, Solomon's benediction at the temple, when it was first consecrated, made mention of that. So while the 10 toes of Europe are now going to begin to shut their doors of immigration because they have finally seen the backlash that it has caused at that particular point in time, while that is happening, according to what I read in Daniel 2, verse 43, 44, 45, that is when the holy people, a cry will be made. The bridegroom comes, go you out to meet him. And they will go, and the door will be opened, and no man will be able to shut it. Not even the Europeans who will try to shut that door. Yes, they're going to try to shut that door. The Russians are going to try to shut the door. The Europeans are going to try to, but they will not be able to shut it. They will lose their kingdoms trying to shut that door. And then, finally, the door will be shut and nobody will be able to enter in. All right. Hopefully, hopefully this has been helpful, and until more news comes out, sayonara.